So I was looking up, and I didn't bring that in here. Oh, we were talking about birds last Friday, and someone was asking about avian flu and if we're concerned. I checked on the latest from Cornell because it was not the Michigan Department of Agriculture that said no, 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 you don't have to take your feeders, and it was Cornell University Ornithology Department, and I swear by Cornell. I think most people turn to Cornell about birds. And Cornell says there's very little indication that there is much spread of avian flu by songbirds. Shorebirds, yes, waterfowl, and poultry, yes. But because of the way that it's spread through the mucus and in concentrations, they are not recommending that you have to take your feeders in, and that makes us feel good because I don't want to take my feeders in. It's wintertime and all those birds out there, what are they going to live on? Or what am I going to do for entertainment? Looking out the window is kind of our big entertainment. I'm used to thinking of bluebirds as being migratory, but I have been told by people that they will stay the winter, and we have at least three out there, two females who come together, or I suppose it could be juveniles that still haven't gotten it, but anyway, two that come together and one that comes by himself. And the by himself is definitely a showy blue male. Are there any questions from among anybody who's any questions that anybody's bringing to us? We have a bunch of stuff lined up. Wouldn't believe how things just pile on here. As you come on, mute your microphone and check your cameras off. Let's see, whose hand is that? I see a hand, but I don't see who it is.
It's me, Barbara Sapirski. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Barbara. What's up?
I have a quick question. Because it's going to be so cold in the next few days, is there anything else to do for the birds? I mean, like for the cats outside, they have heated cat houses. Is there something like that for birds? Is there something more we should be doing, putting hay out there or something?
If you've got a brush pile, that's one of the best things that you can have. And if you put a tarp on the windy side of the brush pile, you're creating a place where there's a windbreak for them. And you'll find the ground feeders like the juncos huddled over there. But other than finding some way to provide them some extra shelter, there's not much you can do. They still need water because if they eat snow, they lose body temperature. You can put out more suet and mealworms. If you've got our bluebirds, they're heavy insect eaters. And so you could put out some, because there's more protein and fat in those than in some of the seeds. See, is there anything else you can do? I mean, one year I took tarps and put them all over we have a hedge, a mixed hedge along the side where Steve has his feeders. And there's yew and holly and juniper in there, but there's also several large dappled willows, and I strung, it looks terrible. Had to go over and I told the neighbors, I said, I know it looks terrible, but I'm only leaving it up until the birds use it because it gives them a little more shelter. But that's about it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Uh-oh, two hands up.
Hello, Dave has a hand up.
You want to moderate, Steve? Go right ahead.
Hey, Dave, go ahead.
All right. I've seen some information recently about starting seeds in milk jugs, especially for the kinds of seeds that need to get exposed to the winter temperatures, like
There are a lot of seeds that need that cold stratification. Yes. Yeah.
Milkweed is one that I saw that they were talking about that you could have a vented milk jug that's got
it forms a little terrarium
soil in the bottom and just expose it to the temperatures and water it occasionally. I don't know if you've ever tried raising seeds outside in the winter, but
I have sown seeds outside that need the winter cold, and then I mark the place. For instance, when we started sowing um, Steve, Uncle Axel's plant.
The lupins.
Lupins, and they need cold stratification. I would peg down a stalk of the lupin with a couple of wire clips. I would peg it down where I put the seed so that I could remember in the spring, because all that matters is that it's out there and that it's getting the change in temperature. I've done it in the garage in the refrigerator, and I've also done it in flats outside, just putting a layer of potting mix in a flat and sewing that flat, and then just putting the flat outside on the north side of the house. But I've never tried doing it in the little terrarium that the milk jug would form. And I'm not sure whether it would germinate more quickly in there and be more susceptible, but somebody's tried it and they must know. It's always fun to do this stuff, even if it's just a learning experience.
Must have been before. Did you mention we had bluebirds?
I did.
Because our case said their parents in northern Indiana had a pair of bluebirds at their feeder all winter.
Yeah, and that's a neighbor had told us a couple of years ago that she saw bluebirds in the winter, and I thought she must be mistaken, but there they are.
We didn't get them until now here, so I never really looked them up, other than I knew they were bluebirds. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had mentioned this earlier, that I was thinking about whether this might be a phosphorus deficiency. Discoloration on leaves is generally telling you something about the health of the leaf, about the minerals and nutrients in that leaf. This is a streptocarpus leaf, and I generally, when they're purple and if they've got a phosphorus deficiency, it's the edge of the leaf. It's not the vein itself. And I am finding that there are some varieties of streptocarpus with colorful leaves, and I'm wondering if this is just natural. I'm looking into this. Has anybody seen this before, where the leaves, the veins of your streptocarpus turn purple? I mean, it's kind of a pretty color. Actually, my granddaughter would correct me that that's not purple. She probably calls that magenta. But
It's a shade of purple.
yeah. What does our son say? There's only 3 colors.
8.
Eight
The
colors.
standard 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to remind those of you who are out planting trees, we couldn't remember the word sapling, Michelle and I last week. The Michigan Beekeepers Association, those are 2 to 4 feet tall, and they're bare root button bushes. And I like all of them.
Yeah.
And they're taking credit card orders only, credit card, debit cards on their site. Go to michiganbees.org, and you'll find their description, a full description of each of the plants that they're selling. This tulip poplar. This is a very fast tree. Julie, if you're there today, you can attest to this. I think we put in a little twig, maybe 2 feet high, at Julie's house 5 years ago, and it's this tall. I'm not exaggerating. If right
plant, right place, they'll take off. Otherwise, they may be slow to establish, but once they get going, look out.
Yeah. So we put one at our son's house and it's taken off too. So if you're interested in little trees, this is a good way to get trees. You do have to be, you'll watch their website and they'll tell you where their pickup places are. So you do have to go pick up the trees, but you get a bare root tree, so you know you're getting good roots and spread out the way they're supposed to be spread out. You just click the place your tree order, and it takes you to a place where you can place your order.
Yep.
I think everybody knows about where the chat is and where the raise your hand is, which is good, because it's so much nicer to have other people speaking with us than to just be speaking by ourselves. I wonder if Sherry is here today. She'd be new. I need a bigger clock in here. No, we're on time. You want to start us off, Steve?
Sure. Good evening and welcome to Free4All Friday. And we're coming to you from gardenatozz.org. I'm Stephen Nicola.
And Janet McConovich. Everybody's welcome to come to this. Invite your friends, tell people about it. We're just celebrating, growing, and cultivating problem solving. The more of us who can share ideas, the better it is. This is our 28th trial of this. We're still taking, thank you very much, RK and Marilyn and Donna for the input over the week. Because we're still trying to figure out just what exactly we can do here, but it's a good way to give people a chance to talk, especially during the growing season when things are so busy. And you can see us and you know who we are. You'll see our website a lot tonight because we've had questions about how to find things on the site. We've been working with pieces of social media that have been sent to us by other people. I think we need to make sure that you can use the site and find things in there and send them to people to maybe get the good information out, because there is a lot of good information in there and a lot still that we need to put in.
Yeah.
We keep the link for the Free4All Friday right on the website, so anybody can come. They don't need an invitation. They can just go to the Fridays page off of our homepage. So the main menu has Fridays. You go to Fridays and it's right there, so they can click and come on anytime. And if there are any questions that didn't bubble to the top a couple minutes ago, you can go ahead and chat. Raise your hand now.
Jean mentioned she planted seeds in milk jugs. The poppies worked really well. I got lucky with the milk jugs. I put them out in late February. First time I planted in the ground, and then put a clear plastic container over the seeds so I would know where they are. The squirrels got them all.
Oh, those squirrels, they love seedlings. They're sprouts. Wait, when we were heavily into vegetable gardening at our old house, I would grow most of the vegetables inside until they had 4 or 5 leaves and then put them out. Because if they came up with just 2 leaves, they were going to get taken. The whole row would get taken. They're sweeter then, but once they get 4 or 5 leaves, they start developing more of the tannins and the other chemical compounds in the leaf that help protect them. But boy, those squirrels, man.
Yeah, after the squirrels, that's when she went to the milk jugs that keeps them safe from squirrels and birds.
We love nature, and we fight with it all the time. Got a lot of input from people about birds, so I want to continue our bird discussion from last week a little bit. Everybody's watching out the window, it seems. And we have some happy stuff and some sad stuff here. You remember that we loved and still love, if we can find a way to keep the squirrels off of it, our
The slinky
right,
will
and
work perfect for that.
we got some pictures of that. We love our goldfinches, and to see them get killed when they run into the window is just an awful thing. It just makes your heart sink. It does for us. Gail sent in, she said, I was working at a client's house. She's a professional gardener, when I heard a big bang. And she said this was the adolescent red-tailed hawk from the nest that's been for several years in the tree. She said they obviously it just hadn't learned yet about windows, and the parents, the adult red tails, circled and cried for days afterwards, looking to see what had happened. So if you are feeding the birds, do everything you can to cut down the reflectivity of your windows. Audubon Society says that the decals don't work, that they tell us to put decals of flying birds on your window and they will, other birds will recognize the surface. That's not true. But if there's a pattern that's 2-inch width or smaller, like louvered Venetian blinds would do, put those up, then it cuts down that reflectivity and you get far less bird strikes. And maybe some of us talk
It's not perfect, but it definitely is less.
And maybe more of us can start making a little bit of noise about big office buildings. When we drive at night and we pass through an area with office buildings with huge glass surfaces, the lights are all ablaze, and it's 10:30 at night. Maybe they're all on because the cleaning people like to have the lights on, but that's a confusion for birds that are flying by, and it's also a tempting reflective surface. We need to find a way to get more people to recognize that all of these millions, literally millions of birds that are killed every year running into windows, that we could cut that number down. Now, this is an old picture, but I want to show this to you because for quite a few years, well, 3 years for sure, at my son's house, while I was babysitting the kids, I would watch and see this white bird come to the feeder. It'd come, grab something, take off. Come, grab something, take off. This is the only picture I ever got of it because I was never fast enough to do that. And when I blew it up and looked at it, this is all seed falling from a bird that's on the perch above, seed falling past him. But this is the bird. It's a chickadee. It's called the leuciform or white form of chickadee, which is not very common. And it's not an albino. It didn't have pink eyes. It just had all white feathers. Steve heard recently.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw the white one.
Oh yeah, that's right.
too.
He was also. But chickadees, I mean, they do. Chickadees come, they grab and run. Grab something and run. They never stay in one place for very long, so it was hard to get a picture of. Steve noticed this article on MLive that a 1 in a million, 1 in 2 million, something like that. Cardinals are yellow instead of red. And he said, "Look at this cardinal." He says, "That's amazing." He said, "That's more amazing than the chickadee." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, the chickadee has white feathers, so you would expect it." I said, "But look at our website. Look at the female cardinal. That color is there." So just the same thing going on. But isn't that a beautiful bird? It's was noticed in Michigan, central kind of Michigan.
Yeah.
So it is fun to watch. And Marilyn, thank you very much for sending this. Now, I didn't put the picture in, Steve. I took a picture of Steve's desk, his brick and mortar desktop, because for years he has had a Slinky sitting on his desktop. And he told me that he was going to do something with it. And this is what it was. Now, this came from a Facebook video. Thank you, Koa Smith, for posting this and sharing it with Marilyn so that she could share it with us. I'm not going to show you the video because that would not be fair, but what happens is the squirrel decides to try to go up and get to the feeder, grabs hold of the Slinky, which extends itself, deposits him on the ground, and then bounces back up, scaring him away. Steve, what did you say about this? That this was a revelation for you for what? Or how it's attached or something?
How to attach it? They attached it in 2 different places, not just one.
And it looks
It's a double hook, and it's hard to figure. I couldn't figure out how to best attach the Slinky to go through the pole.
Well, we'll have to try this on a mild day. It wasn't too bad out there this afternoon. I went out and did some snow sculpting. Not much because I only had an hour left. And the snow is actually too good packing today. You can't unstick it once you stick it on. You put a lump of something on and you try to smooth it out and shape it. No way, it's not doing that. So if we get an afternoon like that before the cold comes in, maybe we can go put your Slinky out there. And to the point of birds being not particularly nice animals, they got sharp beaks, they got claws, they fight with each other. Look at the claws on that hawk, that red-tailed hawk. No wonder animals go the other way. I was shoveling the other day and heard the red tail. We have an adolescent red tail that talks while he hunts, which is counterproductive. But shortly after he sounded, blue jays came in. So the blue jays were monitoring things. But you can see why they would run with something with claws like that. It's just going to grab them right out of the air. Although
Jean said she witnessed a hawk killing a small bird yesterday morning. It kept pouncing on, no pecking, just pouncing, and then carried it off.
And each of the hawks has their own way. Remember, we were talking about the kestrel.
Yep.
Even I call the American kestrel a hover hawk. It's a little hawk about the size of a mourning dove, and it will hover. It will literally stay in one place with the wings going like this, and then dive down on something from not too far away. And what did we read, Steve? That it holds it in the talons and then delivers a killing bite to the back of the neck.
Yeah.
Whereas red tails will usually bring things down to the ground and kill them on impact. And some of them hit them in the air so hard that they're killed by the impact just in the air.
Oh,
Each
yeah.
have their own way. Any bird discussion? 'Cause
No questions so far. Nothing.
they are cool to watch. Okay. Um, I have for so many years expected a thaw about the beginning of the third week of January and about the beginning of the second week of February. Just there always was.
sure.
That's not only I've been noticing that doesn't happen too regularly anymore. And that might be climate change. It might be almost anything. I mean, we're just one lifetime in the middle of all of this weather going on. But it's time to start thinking about ice when you get these changes in temperature. And I understand that what's coming up next is some rain and then snow. So we should be expecting ice. And we should remember that the birds are a little off schedule too. Quite a while ago, I read that the birds in the cities had moved their life cycle up. They were singing their mating songs earlier, which might not be a good thing because then they have young when the insects are not out yet. But the other day I heard the cardinal singing, and I'm used to thinking of the cardinal as singing right after Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Male cardinals been
Early
out there
February.
already, so they're off schedule too. Now, we've asked about, people have asked how to find things on the website. Most of the useful information that we have on the website is in What's Up. So the main menu on our homepage has What's Up as one of the options, and you would click What's Up. Now, this is on a desk computer. If you're on your cell phone, after you click What's Up, you'll get this menu at the bottom of the page. You have to go all the way down to the bottom of the page, but you'll get this menu, and what you want are the ensemble editions. You want to look for those that we've already put out. Once you click ensemble editions and then go back down to the bottom of the page, if you're on your phone, it will come up with the seasons: early winter, winter, late winter. We've just entered winter in our way of thinking it. From the middle of December to the middle of January is early winter, and now we're in winter, and then we're in late winter for a month. We put our articles we file them that way so that if you want to browse and read, then you can just open up a season. So for instance, open up winter, and all of the articles, all of the editions that we put into that section are here with some keywords on what's in there. And you can click on the name of the edition. It will then take you to a place where you can see the page or the links. So thaw pruning, what's coming up 25. If I click 25, this is the page that then comes up. And what you'll see is a thing that says download or read. We varied. We had to reconstruct each of these pages when we redid the website, and sometimes in the middle of the night we changed words. But either read or download. You have to understand that if you click on that to get the issue, it doesn't download right away. It's now there for you to read, and you can click to download it if you want. So you don't have to worry about gunking up your computer just by doing this, but then you can look for page 7 about a pine with ice on it. That branch came back up, stood back up again afterwards. And the important thing to think about with heavy ice is to try to brace things. Don't try to beat the ice off of them, but put props underneath them, crutches underneath them, just to keep to take some of the weight. Brooms, rakes, step ladders, although I was told not to tell people to put step ladders out in their yard and let other people climb onto their roof. Different ways of thinking of things. But the ice on the branch of a tree can actually increase the weight of the branch by 30 times. And that's a lot of weight. If you do go out to brace it, remember how much weight that is and don't go under it. I left a big mess of branches. Was it last year, Steve, at the end of the drought? Our white pine was just dropping branches right and left, big 4-inch branches, 20 feet long, because there was so much weight on them. And I left them there. I shoveled up to them and left them there because to be underneath that tree is dangerous. I came out later and they'd been dragged aside, and I'm pretty sure it was our neighbor who did that. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I'd seen him, I would have called out and said, get out from underneath that tree. So watch for ice and think about taking the weight off. Do keep in mind that we've been writing this stuff for a long time. This is a 2009 issue that we're looking at right now. And this website for Illinois Extension, Urbana-Champaign, has changed just like our website has changed. So if I go to that to exactly that address, I'm not going to find that article. In many cases, they've just changed things too much. But if I go to Illinois Extension, because it said that it was Illinois on it, and search the website for weight of snow and ice, I'm going to get any number of articles. And this is part of what Michelle has often said is going down the rabbit hole, because then you go, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, what's this article about?
Yeah, this is how I like to spend my time. So anybody got any predictions for when we're going to get the next thaw? All we're looking at is when we're going to get the next cold and how cold it's going to be, but we need that next thaw.
It won't be until mid-February.
Okay. Well, then it's time to check on the things that you've got in the garage or the shed. Life is based on water. Terrestrial life, anyway, is based on water. And now's the time, if you've got pots that you put in the garage, if you have cannas or something that you put into a box somewhere, make sure that they're not drying out. Drying out is when they start to shrivel and when the fungus can infect them. Drying out is when they start dying. I had this wheelbarrow full of hellebores and a acanthus, a little tree in the garage. I said, now I can go out there and I can put snow on the surface, and as it gets warm, it'll melt and get in. Because you can't really water pots like that when they're that cold. Said I could do that, but I don't want to do that. They're taking up enough room in the garage as it is. Every time I spread them out, they take up more room. So I'm doing this a different way. I've put a thin layer of newspaper at the bottom of one of the crates, and then half filled it with snow. Then I put the plants in, and just look at all the white that you see there are roots that have grown since one of them, this one, I took out of the pot and cut the bottom off of it and just put it into wet newspaper, and it's been sitting there. And all of that white is new root growth since November, right, Steve?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
End of November.
Yeah. New growth, great stuff to have. So I put them into the snow, and then put them under the deck where it's a little more protected underneath there. And that's the side of the deck where when I'm shoveling the deck, I throw the snow down there. So I've always got a mound of snow. So I can take the snow and I threw it in on and against the crates. So that's insulation. Now that's underneath the deck, and around the edge and the far side of the deck is what we call the dog yard. At least once a week, I'm out picking up in the dog yard. So it's easier for me to take a look and say, oh, I need to put more snow on those and keep them insulated. If you want to know if they're drying out and you're not sure based on weight or anything else, if you have some of those plants in your garden or in a friend's garden, this is hellebore, you can look at the leaves of the one you have in the garden and see if that was my cue on this one. I said, no, some of your leaves are beginning to dry out too much. They shouldn't be drying out like that. But do take care of it. And if you are, Gail sent these in, and I failed to show them last week. They're just so beautiful. We've been raising butterfly caterpillars, many of us. Some of these moths, this is the Cecropia moth, great big moth, are a little harder to raise because they have to overwinter. So this guy, by August, was 3 inches long. I mean, they're big, and then forms a big cocoon. It is a moth, not a caterpillar, so it doesn't form a chrysalis, it forms a cocoon. And that has to spend the winter. Gail puts it into a jar and puts it into her garage and remembers to open it. You do need to do that because if you don't cover it, chipmunks or mice might get in and eat it. It's great protein. But but you want to not leave it covered too long because you want it to hatch out. So the polyphemus moth, which also has to overwinter. Aren't they beautiful, those big eye spots? Is this the one that the presenter showed us, Steve? That these eye spots look just like a fox? That when
It
this
was,
moth was the naturalist it was the naturalist who came to talk at the library. That when this moth
yes.
is sitting on a tree or something and it's a bird comes to it, it will spread its forewings to show this, because then it's making the mask of a fox and it fools the bird and they veer away, which is pretty cool. So check on your living things out in the garage. Any questions in chat?
Well, Dave says we will have to wait for the groundhog to tell us when the next thaw is coming. And Michelle has strawberries in the circle green stalks in the garage. I wonder if they will make it in the next week with a moving blanket around them.
Well, it depends on how cold your garage is. Our garage doesn't freeze if you're in the part of the garage that's against the wall of the house. Just like under our deck, it's just leaking heat all over the place through the windows and through the walls, and that deck is helping keep it in. So there's warmer and colder places in your garage. Now, if they're in stalks, so they're probably in sleeves. If you were just to put those all together so that they're insulating each other, then they've got fewer, kind of like the penguins. When I went out to do sculpture, I was trying to make a flock of penguins out there. How the penguins all huddle together and the ones on the outside gradually work their way to the inside, and the inside ones come to the outside so that they get warm in the middle and then they're colder on the outside. So you might want to just bundle them up together and then they'll protect each other. Or
You,
put them in your crisper drawer for the rest of the winter.
Judith always wondered about light for plants that overwintered in her garage. There's a little potted Japanese maple that, to her surprise, survived winter in the garage. What else will survive in low light conditions?
Almost anything in the wintertime. In the wintertime, the photosynthesis is so low, even on evergreens, that they can just abide. If you think about some of the junipers and rhododendrons and yews, they'd be under snow in some areas where they come from anyway. There is light reflected through snow particles, but it's still dim. And the deciduous plants, they're not photosynthesizing unless it gets warm enough and they've got real thin bark, like all the birches and the maples. They can photosynthesize through their bark, but they don't need to. So nurseries will put them into low hoop houses and they sometimes will cover all the pots and things that they've got there with black insulated cloth. They'll cover them completely over and then just take them off once it starts getting warm. So almost anything can do that.
It's also a good idea to put some kind of insulation between potted plants and the cement, Michelle says. I'm not sure. We've put them just on the garage floor.
Yeah, I've kept them on the garage floor, but it's going to vary all the time. I mean, yeah, if you had,
Well, it's going to get below zero this week, so that's colder than last year.
well, then that would be very interesting to have the thermometers out there now and look and
Yeah.
see how cold it gets. I'm pretty well convinced that if I built a cupboard against the wall of the back wall of the garage, which is against the house, that I could have a perfect place to keep things over the winter time, just close them in
Oh,
that
yeah.
cupboard. But it'd be nice to have a thermometer out there and check and watch it now.
Yeah.
I love watching these cranes dance. He just jumps straight up in the air. Did I tell you, Steve, that I was reading about the cranes and that because they are identical, the male and the female both have the same markings, that part of their dancing is to authenticate who you are.
Yeah, I'm a dude.
Yep, I dance.
I'm a dude. I'm a dude.
Okay, we talked about amaryllis last week and wanting to keep it growing. I thought I would use that to show you another way to find things on the website. So you can look in the season and look for keywords like amaryllis or whatever, or you can do a search on any of our pages. So you can type in amaryllis or whatever it is that you're looking for, and it'll take you to pages. This is page 1, page 2, where you can then click and it'll take you to different articles or pictures that's going on. So for instance, if I picked What's Up 75, it would click and take me right to that page where I could then open the PDF to read about the article. I can also read the table of contents, say that it's about amaryllis and this is about after the bloom is gone. So I open the PDF, I open it up to page 10, I scroll down to page 10, I get stuck on page 9 because there was the Callan Coe article I was looking for. Why did I have to write all that stuff in an email to Sue the other week? I could have just copied what was already there. About amaryllis and what you can do to it and what others have told us to do to it. So you can do a search or you can just read by season. Someone said
Chris-
that it might have been Marilyn that she doesn't get much activity at her finch feeder at all. And I'm wondering if is this your good mix, Steve?
No, that's way back in the day when we were first learning mixes. That this has a lot of the millet and Milo in
Well, the
it.
millet's okay. The millet is the light brown, the tan.
Yeah,
Yellow,
but
though, red round stuff, they just don't eat that. They throw it all on the ground. So
a lot of this mix gets thrown on the ground.
yeah. So your new mix has Niger, has the black Niger, also called thistle seed.
Yeah.
Not the same as our wild as Canada thistle. It's a different entirely. It has Niger seed, it has millet seed. What else is in there?
And sunflower heart.
Okay, so
Real
cracked
small
sunflowers.
pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kristen said she potted 2 amaryllis bulbs about 2 weeks ago. They have green poking up about a half inch, but not shooting up yet. Do I need to just be patient?
Yes, you do need to be patient, and it sounds like if there's just green, because the leaves will come up and sit at the bottom. Sounds like your leaves have come up first. It may not have made a flowering stalk. If it's a new amaryllis that came from a grower, it certainly should be sending up a flowering stalk, and it might be just following the leaves. But if this is something you've kept over the year, it could be that it didn't form a flowering stalk, and you're just going to get leaves. It needs that resting period. You have to convince it to stop growing, preferably by September, and then let the bulb rest until it starts growing again. And if it doesn't get enough rest, it doesn't make a flower bulb. Yeah.
That's all for any questions so far.
Okay. I've always loved this picture of this red-winged blackbird just marching along the branch, Steve. I don't know how you caught
Yeah, I wish I could have gotten his eye to glow, but sun was at the wrong angle, but it's still a very cool picture. Thank you.
It's a good time of year to shower the indoor plants and the outdoor plants. Not on a cold day, but be thinking about the fact that a lot of these plants, especially the evergreens, if they're near a road, at 45 miles an hour, salt spray travels a couple hundred feet. At 25 miles an hour, 50 feet. So you're getting salt, pulverized salt, misting plants. And if you look and say, I've got some special things out here, and they've been salting the roads a lot this year. They've salted ours a couple times already. I hate that when they do it. That's a plant that you're going to want to go out in April and rinse it off. Get the salt off before the buds open, because once the buds open, they're going to be very susceptible to being dried, dehydrated to death by the salt that's laying on them. So it's a good time to think about washing plants. And if you want to read this issue in PDF, I'll make it larger and tell you that there's a washing plants article on page 9. And again, if you scroll through like I do, I go, there it is. There's that article about how to put a swing on a tree branch without killing the branch, because people rope around a branch and end up girdling the branch over time. But this is the way to put a a hook in so that you can have a long-term swing on a heavy tree branch. But rinsing out the houseplants, that one turned out to be just one of the this week in the garden, what we do right now. Waiting for the woodpecker to come in. I don't see any suet in that feeder there, Guy.
No, no, the woodpecker wouldn't be coming.
No, I don't think so.
Um, Michelle is asking, why do we not need to water or pot the amaryllis that we buy this year in dew flower? Everything just in the bulb, I assume. Still seems weird.
Right, the embryonic flower stalk is there. It was triggered uh, to initiate growth by the being a big enough plant with enough leaves and enough photosynthetic energy, and then that cessation of that growth, it starts the bulb, it starts the flower stalk. But sometimes we don't give them the right conditions and they don't make a flower stalk. Like before we got started here, Sonia and I were talking about the voodoo lily that she gave me, and whether I dug it up yet, which I haven't, see whether it's still alive. But she said she's brought hers out and it's only up just a little bit. And yet the woman that she got the bulb for has got it up to 4 feet to 2 or 3 feet tall already. And that might be that that other plant got stopped in growth earlier or later, had a different amount of temperature while it was being held. There's so many variables that affect the internal chemistry of the cells of a plant.
Yeah. Nancy has heard that you can give African violets a shower, but she's never had the guts to try it.
If you give them a shower, you need to make sure that you put them back into a place that's got really good air circulation so that they don't sit with wet leaves. But you can do that. You can shower them off. I never did that either. I always watered our African violets from the bottom, and was continually clipping off leaves. I think cyclamen mites might be the only thing that I would worry about on an African violet, and we never had a problem with those. And none of our leaves ever got old enough to really get very decrepit because I was constantly cutting off old leaves and letting the new leaves, because they look so much nicer. But washing off plants, we would keep a plant until I couldn't fit it in the bathtub anymore. Because on the bigger plants, I would put them in the bathtub, cover the surface of the soil with some kind of plastic wrap, just so that I didn't over soak the bottom, and then turn on the shower and shower them. If they had insect problems, I would first spray them. The surface of the potting mix is covered with plastic. I would first spray the leaves until they were dripping with
Both sides.
Murphy's oil, soap, and water. Let them sit for 20 minutes and then turn the shower on and rinse that off. But once it got too big for the bathtub, then we would go out in October when we brought the other plants in. We would stand there and say, "I'm sorry, you're on your own now," and we'd leave that plant outside. Because so many sucking insects get onto plants inside, and many of them, like mealybugs, able to live on a lot of different kinds of plants. So I was talking to somebody whose plant was way too big to go into the shower anymore, and she was fighting mealybug on it. I said, it's just not worth it. This is getting onto your other plants, because every time you touch this plant and then go someplace else, you might be carrying one of the mealybugs with you. The cats might be coming by this plant and another plant. I mean, you might just as well get rid of it. But this mealybug example was in a issue that was about a kumquat. It's a citrus plant. Steve's beautiful picture of a fern unfolding. And it's a four-page article about this problem that they've got dots of fuzzy white. That is a pretty sure sign that there's mealybug on the plant. In addition, when mealybug is there and they're sucking on that leaf, they are excreting a lot of fluid because they're sucking on sap And just like making maple syrup from maple tree sap, you have to take a lot of liquid out to boil it down to get all of the sugar out of it. So mealybugs and other suckers are doing that same thing, and they're excreting quite a bit of stuff that ends up becoming a sticky surface on leaves below where they are. So you watch for the sticky. Sometimes you can even see it as you walk by. You'll see a little sparkle. Say, what's sparkling on that leaf of that monstera or that bay tree or whatever? And then you realize that, okay, there's got to be some mealybug action going on in here. If you watch the plant every few days, you can stay ahead of mealybug because it knocks off mealybugs that are in crawler stage. When they get older, they're a lot harder to knock off. But if you knock them off every few days, you don't have very many reaching adulthood. Or you can mop them with rubbing alcohol. That's what Trudy decided to do with her kumquat, with a little jar of alcohol and Q-tips. She just dab each bit of white, because what the alcohol does is just dry the living daylights out of their exoskeleton, and it kills them that way. Will it get into the rest of the collection? She said, is it? I said, yes, it will. Keep that kumquat away from everything else, because mealybugs are very Catholic in their tastes. Mealybugs are one of those things that can ruin a greenhouse grower's greenhouse if they get an infestation of mealybugs. Most of the time when you get unusual things, because most people in their indoor plants get mealybugs, they get sick. There's two kinds of scale. They might get soft scale, like the mealybugs, and they might get a hard scale. They might get thrips, just a little tiny flying insect, and fungus gnats. And those are all pretty broad in their ability to live on a lot of different kinds of plants. If you have something more unusual than that, it probably came to you from the grower, because it's not coming from your other plants. Most of the others are more specific than that. And no to whoever it was who wrote, no, we don't keep a poinsettia. We don't keep plants in the house, with the exception of the epiphytes that we're now getting ourselves into. But we never kept a poinsettia. I always just thought they took up too much room for not presenting very much ornamentation for most of the year.
Dave thinks for a future topic, we might consider a list of Honolulu blue flowering plants for gardeners to continue rooting for the Lions year round.
Okay, Steve, you tell them about the Lions, that last year I would not have allowed that comment to even be made.
Yeah, I was banned from even talking about the Lions, period. I couldn't mention the Detroit Lions for years. I said, maybe they'll be good this year, haha. So when they started getting good, I would talk about like it was a different team.
You would tell me
And
about some wonderful thing that happened in a football game and make it up as if it was another team, because he just had to talk about the Lions. Now I'm letting him talk openly about the Lions. I've even watched some Lions games with him, but I would tell him, because every year he'd say, I think they might have a chance this year. And I'd say, in my lifetime, they haven't done anything. Just don't talk to me about those guys. But yeah, Honolulu Blue. What did we see from from Caitlin, one of your kids you brought up, who's in Arizona now? What was she wearing on the Christmas?
the Lions.
And they're all wearing Lions shirts.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Down there. So anyway, nothing new.
Okay. If you're looking for a light and looking for a lamp, a lot of times people are in the dark. They're much more available now, but lumens is what you need to learn about. If you want to grow plants inside, it's not wattage, it's lumens. It's how much light they produce. And so watts is power. And if I take lumens and divide it by watts, I can get efficiency. But lumens is what I want to know for how much light does it put out. The more light it puts out, the further away the light is still effective for a plant, because many of these grow lights, if you're more than 3 or 4 inches away from it, you're not getting much benefit for the plant, because the lumens aren't as high as they could be. Now that there is so much indoor growing of marijuana in various places, there's a lot more supply at hydroponic stores and whatever to be able to find these things. But if you have the same problem that I have with January being your low month, seasonal affect disorder of the short days and the gray days. Putting a higher lumen bulb or full spectrum bulb in your lamps can help too.
Indeed.
Seasonal affect disorders. This guy was looking for something for his plants and didn't realize he could use the one that he bought for himself. You just want something that's not going to give off heat, because you have to have the plants close to it. And that's why you go with fluorescent or the new LED lights. How's this going on this week?
No, not much.
Oh, mites. Mites, our daughter Sonia has a mite problem in her indoor garden. If you want to get rid of mites, washing is a real good way to do it. But there are also, for those of you who like playing around with these kinds of things, there are predatory mites, also called beneficial mites, that you can order from Integrated Pest Management Services. They're used in places like the aviary at the Detroit Zoo, butterfly houses, places where pesticides can't be used. They use mealybug destroyers. They use beneficial mites. They use beneficial nematodes. When we look for these things, we often order from armacoreorganics.com. There are other companies certainly out there, but that's the one that we tell people about. Mites are much harder to get rid of. You have to just keep washing, keep washing, keep washing, keep washing. And even then, some of them are still going to be around. And if your plant is in decline or low energy, the mites will tend to multiply. Stephen told me, it might have been here. Stephen said, you remember you trashed a plant in about 2 seconds when we were first married, that little gift gardenia that went south. And oh yeah, I remember that. I walked up to the gardenia one day and could see mites. I mean, literally, there were so many of them that they were walking their webs back and forth between leaves. I went, oh my God. Yeah, when you got that many, it's not worth fighting for.
Yep.
Osprey, Steve?
Yes. Was it Chesapeake Bay area when I went to Virginia
Okay.
at Bert and Becky's? Not Chesapeake. Yeah, Chesapeake Bay.
And then isn't there that big osprey nesting area? No, that's a heron nesting area over in Utica too. Look at the
Yes.
size
Yeah.
of that nest.
Yeah, there was dozens of them along this route that I took down to Virginia along the coast.
They're not as big as an eagle, but they're a big bird, the osprey.
Yep.
We read about an eagle's nest. These big nests aren't necessarily constructed in one year. They're added to year by year by year. A big nest came down in Ohio, and the article said that it weighed over 2 tons. And they had a
Yeah.
picture of a park ranger standing in the nest. I mean, it was huge, enormous. It's the entire neighborhood's leaf twig pile.
Yep.
How many are in there? 1, 2.
There's at least 3, maybe 4, because you can't see the bottom edge.
Remember
And
when
so
we were
it
watching
might be turned the other way. The one that won't get or gets fed the most is facing toward the camera. The rest are facing the tree.
Okay. Remember when we were watching those 3 hawks in the nest? And they were
Yeah.
jammed in there, and one of them put its wings out and kind of flapped a little bit, like, give me some room. And he lifted up and ended up on the branch above the nest, and you could see the 2 down below going, how did you get up there? How did you do that? I mean, it had to be the first flight. That was very cool to watch.
Yeah, we were lucky to be there.
Just trying to get out of the way. If you feel like I do, I do more cooking in the winter than I do in the summertime. And so I'll peel potatoes for potato salad. I'll peel squash for soup. I'll peel carrots to put into the stew. And I look at all these vegetable peelings. So you can keep composting those in the winter. I put them out. Right now I have a bunch of black bananas in the refrigerator that I'll chop up and put out. You can put them out, and they'll sheet compost, where you just spread them out on the ground and let them mix with the mulch. But there are some other things that you can do, and it's been recommended. Download the PDF on this one, page 6. KB let's see, who was it who said? Well, anyway, some people freeze their, just keep old cartons, milk cartons or other cartons, and just put their peelings in them and freeze them. And then put them into the compost in the springtime. One person said, I just go ahead and put them out there. I put them on the compost. They're just frozen. They're not going to be rotting. There's not going to be anything. But I hated to come out in the spring to a compost layer that was thick and slimy and beginning to break down and smell. I just didn't want to see that. So you don't have to do that kind of stuff. You can just keep your compost stuff on ice, kind of. Or you can do what I do, which is I walk out to a different garden every time I walk out and I throw them on and let them mix in with the mulch. Nobody can tell the difference between a carrot peel and a shred of wood chips.
Yeah.
While I was looking through that article, I found a couple things that Steve and I said, well, is that where that is? We were talking in this article about when you want to use loppers and when you want to use a saw, and why when you take the loppers, it will crush one side of the wood, which is a bad cut, whereas a saw makes a cleaner cut. So we call our loppers our destructor loppers. And on the next pages, as I was looking through to see if that was the end of that article, Steve, we do have sooty mold illustrations. That what you're looking for, that especially this time of year, you can see it. You look at a plant and its shadow is on the top of branches. That's called sooty mold, and that's the fungus that's growing on the excrement that's been dripping from insects feeding in the plant. And in the winter, those insects aren't active. There's not anything you can do about them then, but you can tell where they are. You can tell whether you're going to have a bad year with your magnolia because the top of the branch looks like that, has a shadow on the top. So while you're out, if you go out shoveling, or like me, until I got wet and a little discouraged, I was trying to make my penguin flock. We have 3. I don't think 3 qualifies as a flock though. But while you're out there, look around, look and see if there's anything that you can do to head off, because most people don't realize that their maple might be struggling a bit because it's losing a lot of moisture and nutrients to insects, or their oak or their magnolia.
Michelle's smiling that even Janicle's down her rabbit holes.
Yeah, it's really hard on these. Anytime on the computer, I get sidetracked into stuff that I don't even know how I got here when I get there. I understand that there are more and more of our native swans showing up with the black bills.
Good.
There's been a reintroduction plan centered on the Big Bend area, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan conjuncture, and they're spreading them into lakes all up along the west side of the state. So maybe we'll have more of our native swans. And since we're looking at evergreens, and looking just to see if there's anything you can do to head off spring trouble, pine scale and pine sawfly are examples. So I'm going to read this issue, that's a winter issue, about depesting a mugo pine. And our upshot is you might want to take it out if it's really bad. But he talked about worm-like creatures on the needles, and I said, well, that's pretty sure that that's going to be sawfly. They're a caterpillar. Sorry, they are not a caterpillar. They look like a caterpillar, but they metamorphose when they're an adult into a gnat-like creature. But they eat the old needles. This one has been chomping away on this needle and backing down, eating the whole needle. You can see this time of year the eggs for pine sawfly laid on the needles. It'll give you an idea whether it's going to be a heavy year, or whether you might want to watch that pine and spray it with an oil soap or a dormant oil or horticultural oil, or do some pruning to thin it out, to get rid of some of those eggs that are there, because when they hatch quickly. Now these guys, the black-headed sawfly, they're European, so is the mugo pine. They eat the old needles. So see, the new needles are coming out. They're not eating those. They eat the old needles. They're particular about that. The red-headed sawfly will eat the new needles. So if you get a double whammy of both types of sawflies, you're going to have branches totally stripped on your pine, and they may not leaf out again if there's not live buds at the tip. So you can look this time of year and kind of get an idea of what you're getting yourself into. A lot of people with mughal pines like to keep them bushy and dense, and that's not ideal for a mughal pine. These pines are mountaintop livers. Mountaintop is their natural environment. Lots of air movement, lots of big open branches and spaces to walk. And the more that you let that air movement and birds get in, the birds are picking these eggs off. The birds are picking off the caterpillars and helping keep it clean for you. The scale is white. You see the white scale later in the year. But you'll see some of it on the branches now, except on what's the kind of pine that has little white dots on it anyway, Steve?
Bristlecone.
Bristlecone pine naturally looks scaly, but it is
Yeah.
not. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way on my pictures here. Whoa, whoa, that is a startling picture, Stephen.
Yep. Nothing new.
Okay. Another thing to look for this time of year is because you can see the forms of trees when there are fewer leaves in the way. Losing a leader is losing form and direction, and in an evergreen, that's especially important. So, for instance, in what's coming up 171, which is not a PDF issue, we did issue it both ways. We let people download it as a PDF or read the articles online separately, and then we gave up doing both of them because it was extra work and no one was telling us which one was which one they liked. So you can go to when you go to what's coming up 171, either through a search or through the ensemble edition season, this will come up and you can then click on the flat top fir, for instance, and it'll take you to this article. It's actually a spruce, but the person who was there didn't realize that. She said it's lost its leader to borers. And what do? I can't get up on the ladder with the crew that's going to come and take care of it, but can we give it a new leader? So if you see the dead tip in the winter, that really stands out. And some other dead tips, it's been infested with borer. And now it's got a bunch of branches all vying to be the leader. So it was cut down to a good branch. And Margaret said that the pruning company wanted to take that branch off too. And I told them no. She said, no, that's the new leader. It might not look like it, but it will straighten itself up and become the new leader on the plant. If you're pruning to do this, to give a new leader, like we do, keeping spruces small, then you establish how tall you want it to be and say, well, I have to cut the leader here and leave it just a side branch. Once you make that cut, you have to cut the other branches below it because they could turn up and will turn up quickly and become competing leaders. If you want to keep that pyramidal shape, you have to prune all the way down the side. You can't prune just the top. And I've done this a number of times. I almost gave up on my son's tree. We told him that we could keep it nice for him for 7 to 10 years. And it's been 12 now, hasn't it? And this last time,
it's been there a while.
Yeah, this last time I cut it, I said, I don't know that it's going to come back into shape, but it has. It's got a new leader and a beautiful, beautiful new growth at the top. So can you see the competing leaders here? There should be one leader, one above the rest. And if you're looking out in the winter and you look up and see that many, chances are that you're going to have a tree that will be weak at the top and can split apart between the two. So these two who are competing with each other, this one is winning the race, at least temporarily, but these two are not attached strongly to the trunk or each other. And as they get bigger and get as big around as your leg, for instance, this branch, when they get heavy with snow, they're going to peel straight apart and split your tree down the middle. So you want to establish just one, say pick one, keep one, cut the others back. And now's the time to see the shape and the structure of the trees.
Yep.
And this was just fun. I found it while I was looking at winter stuff. I said, what else have we got in the winter? So when Margaret told us about how every winter she would go and stay with friends and they would volunteer on the Rose Bowl decoration crew and take all those seeds and petals and apply them one by one by one by one. Look at that. To make these designs for the Rose Bowl parade.
Yep. It has to be all live plant material,
That's Margaret
or
right there, yeah.
organic material. It's
And
pretty
that's
incredible, actually.
and that's all we have for you this week, gang, unless you've got something else. They are so pretty, cardinals. Cardinals are just such my sister Linda and her husband John lived for a while in England while he was working there. And they made friends who came to visit them back in the States when they moved back to this when Linda and John moved back to the States. And one of the couples that they met were big on bird watching, like my sister was. And they said, well, we want to come, we want to see a cardinal. They stayed for a week and never saw a cardinal. I mean, it's like the cardinals all hid.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sky was threatened. So that's it for this Free for All Friday. And you are welcome to send us questions, comments, suggestions, especially about who we can have. So the topics are good. Gretchen had suggested that we have someone talk about permeable pavement, and I think that's really a great idea.
That's a good idea.
Yep. So any suggestions you've got would be wonderful. We love coming and talking with you. Gardeners exchanging information is a great way to keep us from having to make each other's mistakes over and over again. Our next Free for All Friday will be next Friday night. Steve and I will be coming to you from Valparaiso, Indiana, where the Michiana Master Gardeners are having their big gala on Saturday, the 25th. And we'll be speaking. So will Richard Hawk from Chicago Botanic Gardens. You might want to check into that if you're in that area.
Yeah, if you feel like taking a little drive.
Oh, they have great vendors set up too. I mean, they're
The last time we were there, it sure was.
yeah. And our next webinar is February 1st. It's called Goofy Gardeners Pruning for Less, Seeding for More. We'll let you hang on what that means, but if you'd like to try it just for one time, we're not going to open it to everybody, but if you'd like to try the webinars, send us an email and we'll let you try that one for free. And we'll see whether or not we can expand the community here. Thank you all for being here.
Have a good evening and take care. Ta-ta for now.